Part 1. The morning started like any other in Pineville, Alabama. Danny McGraw sat on his porch with his coffee, watching the sun come up over the pine trees. He was 72 years old and had seen a lot in his life. He fought in Korea back in the day. Nothing much surprised him anymore. But today would be different. Something moved across the sky. It wasn't a bird or a plane. Danny squinted and saw a shadow that didn't belong there. It was huge and perfectly still, just hanging in the air way up high. He called for his wife to bring his binoculars. Through the lenses, Danny saw something that made his heart skip. A massive object floated in the sky, shaped like nothing he'd ever seen. It had strange angles and a dull metal surface that seemed to shimmer. This wasn't anything made by humans. Within 20 minutes, Danny had called his neighbors. Within an hour, half the town gathered at Earl's Gas and Grocery. Earl Dawson owned the place and had lived in Pineville his whole life. People trusted him. When something strange happened, folks came to Earl. Earl climbed onto the bed of his pickup truck so everyone could see him. He had Danny's binoculars and pointed them at the sky. The crowd grew quiet as Earl studied the object. "Well, folks," Earl said slowly, "either our government has been keeping secrets, or we've got visitors from somewhere else." Betty Clark ran the local diner. She crossed her arms and frowned. "You're saying that's an alien ship?" "I'm saying it's not one of ours," Earl replied. "Craig, you were Air Force. What do you think?" Craig Hudson pushed through the crowd. He'd spent 20 years in the military before retiring to Pineville. He took the binoculars and looked for a long time. When he lowered them, his face was serious. "That's not any aircraft I've ever seen. The shape is wrong. The way it's hovering is wrong. We don't have technology that can do that." A young mechanic named Jake pulled out his phone. "Guys, the internet is going crazy. These things are showing up all over the South. Someone in Tennessee got video. Someone else in Georgia. People are saying they're alien ships." The crowd started murmuring. Some people looked scared. Others looked angry. Earl raised his hand for quiet. "Now let's not panic. Maybe they're just passing through. Maybe they're friendly. But just in case they're not, we should be ready." "Ready for what?" someone asked. "We can't fight aliens." Earl looked at the gathered crowd. He saw farmers and teachers, mechanics and shop owners. He also saw something else. He saw people who knew how to work together. People who didn't give up when things got hard. "Maybe not," Earl said, "but we can sure try if we have to." Far above Pineville, Commander Vexthor stood on the bridge of his warship. The ship was called Domination, and it was one of the most powerful vessels in the Zathran Empire. Vexthor had conquered dozens of planets. He was very good at his job. "Status report," he commanded. His weapons officer checked the displays. "The atmospheric weapon is charging as planned. It will be ready in 6 hours. The target zone has been marked." Vexthor looked at the holographic display showing Pineville below. Such a small place, so insignificant. The weapon would eliminate everything within 50 miles. It would be a perfect demonstration of Zathran power. After seeing what happened to this town, the rest of humanity would surrender immediately. "Any signs of military response?" Vexthor asked. "No, sir. The humans appear to be gathering in groups, but they have no military installations in this area. Just primitive settlements." "Good. Let them gather. Let them watch. They'll understand the futility of resistance soon enough." Back in Pineville, Earl had moved the meeting inside his store. A smaller group of people crowded around a table covered with maps. Craig had called his nephew, who worked at a military base in Georgia. The nephew had called other people. Now they had a speakerphone connection to some very interesting folks. "General Price speaking," a voice came through the phone. "Earl, your nephew's friend gave me the situation. I've been tracking these ships for the past hour. They're positioned over civilian targets all across the South." "What do they want?" Earl asked. "We don't know yet, but the energy readings suggest they're charging some kind of weapon. You need to evacuate your town. How much time do we have?" "Best guess? 6 to 8 hours before whatever they're planning happens." Earl looked around at his neighbors. "General, we've got about 1,200 people here. That's a lot of folks to move in a few hours. And if these ships are everywhere, where would we even go?" There was silence on the other end. Then the general spoke again. "You're right. Running might not help. I wish I had better news." Craig leaned toward the phone. "General Price, sir. What if we didn't run? What if we fought back?" "Son, that ship is in low orbit. It's beyond the range of anything you'd have access to. What about indirect methods? What if we didn't try to hit the ship but disrupted whatever it's doing? The general paused. Explain. Well, sir, I'm just thinking out loud here. But if that ship is using some kind of gravitational system to stay in position, and if it's charging a weapon that needs precise targeting, then maybe we could interfere with that. Create atmospheric disturbances, make it hard for them to maintain stability. You'd need massive amounts of coordinated explosions, the kind of firepower that... Earl suddenly smiled. General, how much firepower are we talking about? More than you have, unless you've got a few tons of explosives lying around. Earl and Craig looked at each other, then Earl started laughing. General, have you ever met Roy Henderson? Who? He's a local who's been collecting fireworks for 40 years. Has enough to put on a show that could light up half the state. There was another long pause. When the general spoke again, his voice had changed. He sounded interested. Fireworks. You want to fight an alien invasion with fireworks? Do you have a better idea? Earl asked. Actually, no. I don't. And you know what? It might work. Those ships' sensors are designed to detect missiles and military weapons. They probably wouldn't even register fireworks as a threat until it was too late. Craig grabbed a pencil and started writing. General, if we're really doing this, we'll need calculations. Trajectory, timing, blast patterns. Can you help us? Give me 30 minutes. I'll have my team run the numbers. Earl, you're all insane. You know that, right? Probably, Earl agreed. But we're also not going to sit here and wait to die. After the call ended, Earl addressed the group. All right, here's the situation. We've got maybe 6 hours before that thing up there does something bad. We can run, but there's nowhere to go. Or we can fight using what we have. It's crazy, but it might work. What do you need from us? Asked Betty. Everything. We need people to help Roy load fireworks. We need vehicles to transport them. We need folks who can handle the technical side. And we need everyone else to stay calm and help evacuate people to safer areas just in case this goes wrong. Jake raised his hand. I'm in. Tell me what to do. Me too, said Marcus Lee, who owned the local quarry. One by one, people volunteered. Not because they thought they'd win. Not because they weren't scared. But because this was their home, and they'd fight for it. Earl climbed back onto his truck bed and addressed the full crowd that had gathered outside. Listen up. We've got a plan. It's not a good plan, but it's what we've got. Anyone who wants to leave town should do so now. No shame in that, but anyone who stays needs to be ready to help. Almost no one left. They were scared, sure, but they were also stubborn. This was Pineville. This was home. Part 2 Roy Henderson's property looked like something from a crazy dream. Shipping containers lined his back acres, each one carefully labeled and organized. Roy himself was 73 years old, mostly deaf in one ear from a fireworks accident back in the 80s, and absolutely thrilled about the current situation. I always knew these would come in handy, Roy shouted as he led Earl and a group of volunteers through his collection. Got mortars from Pennsylvania, rockets from Texas, aerial shells from Nevada. Been collecting for 40 years. Craig was taking notes and comparing them to the calculations General Price had sent over. We need high-altitude capability. Big explosions that can create atmospheric disturbances. The goal is to throw off their positioning system. Like shaking a ladder while someone's standing on it, Jake said, trying to understand. Exactly like that. Roy grinned and opened one of his largest containers. Inside were rows and rows of commercial-grade fireworks. The kind used for professional displays at state fairs and big celebrations. Will these work? Craig studied them carefully. These are perfect. How many do you have? About 3,000 individual pieces. Maybe more. I stopped counting years ago. Earl pulled out a map and spread it on the hood of his truck. General Price says we need 3 launch points arranged in a circle around the town. That gives us Johnson's Ridge, the old quarry, and the Water Tower Hill. Marcus stepped forward. I own the quarry. Got all my equipment there. We can set up easy. I'll take the ridge, Craig said. I know that area well. Katie Sullivan, the volunteer fire chief, looked at the map. I can handle the water tower. I train there all the time. Earl checked his watch. They'd been planning for 2 hours. That left about 4 hours before the alien ship did whatever it was planning to do. All right, people, let's move. Roy, start loading trucks with everything we need. Craig, you coordinate the technical setup. Danny, you've got military experience. Help us stay organized. Betty raised her hand. What about everyone else? The people not helping with this? We need them at the high school. It's the sturdiest building we have. Lisa, you're a teacher. You know the layout. Get people there and keep them calm. Lisa Cooper nodded and headed off with Betty. Within minutes, trucks were being loaded with fireworks, wire, batteries, and anything else they might need. The town moved like a well-oiled machine. Everyone had a job. Everyone knew what to do. Jake found himself at the quarry with Marcus and several others. They were setting up what looked like a massive battery of firework launchers, 50 metal tubes, all angled at specific coordinates that Craig had calculated. "This is insane," Jake said as he connected wires to detonators. Marcus laughed while positioning another tube. "Son, we're fighting aliens with fireworks. Insane doesn't even begin to cover it. You ever think we might actually pull this off? Honestly, no idea. But I'd rather die trying than die doing nothing." Up on the ridge, Craig had created what looked like a military rocket position. Dozens of high-altitude rockets, all aimed at precise angles, connected to a central firing system made from car batteries and wire from Earl's hardware store. Craig double-checked each connection. Everything had to fire at exactly the right moment. 1 second too early or too late and the whole plan would fail. He thought about his years in the Air Force, all that training, all those missions. None of it had prepared him for fighting aliens with festival pyrotechnics. His radio crackled. "Position 2, this is position 3. How's it looking?" Katie's voice. Craig smiled. "Looking good here. How about you? I've got 50 aerial shells ready to go. When these light up, it'll be prettier than any 4th of July show you've ever seen. Let's hope the aliens appreciate the display." At the water tower, Katie was arranging her shells in a specific pattern. Each one would detonate at a different time, creating a cascade effect. She'd rigged timing devices using modified Christmas light controllers. Not exactly military hardware, but it would work. A teenager named Sophie helped her connect the last few wires. "Miss Katie, are we really going to survive this?" Katie stopped working and looked at the girl. "I don't know, Sophie, but I know we're going to try. And sometimes trying is enough." Back at Earl's store, Danny had set up a communication center using ham radios and CB radios. Every position could talk to every other position. It wasn't fancy, but it worked. He sat on the roof with binoculars watching the alien ship. "Earl, the ship is glowing brighter." Danny called down. "Whatever it's doing, it's building up to something." Earl relayed this to General Price. "General, how much time do we have?" "Hard to say, but that glow means the weapon is charging. You're looking at an hour, maybe less. We'll be ready." All across Pineville, people worked with desperate speed. Trucks delivered supplies. Volunteers ran messages. Betty and Lisa got the last of the townsfolk to the high school shelter. Nobody panicked. Nobody gave up. They just worked. Aboard the Domination, Commander Vexthor reviewed his displays. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The weapon was at 70% charge. The targeting systems were locked. In less than an hour, the demonstration would begin. "Sir, I'm detecting unusual activity below," his sensor officer reported. "Define unusual." "The humans are moving around in organized patterns, and there are multiple heat signatures appearing in a circle around the target zone." Vexthor looked at the readings. "What are they doing?" "Unknown, sir. The heat signatures are consistent with chemical combustion, but they're too small to be weapons. Keep monitoring. If they launch anything toward us, destroy it." "Yes, sir." Earl gathered the key people for a final check. Craig, Marcus, Katie, Jake, Danny, and Roy all crowded around the radio. "Position, sound off," Earl said. "Position 1 ready," Craig reported from the ridge. "Position 2 ready," Marcus said from the quarry. "Position 3 ready," Katie called from the water tower. Earl looked at the calculations one more time. 3 launch sites. Over 3,000 fireworks. All timed to detonate in a synchronized pattern designed to create maximum atmospheric chaos. It was crazy. It was desperate. It was all they had. "General Price, you still on the line?" "I'm here, Earl. Listen, whatever happens, you did good. Your town came together. That's something to be proud of." "We're not done yet, General." "No, you're not. And Earl, I've got some good news. While you were setting up, we moved some orbital defense platforms into position. If your plan works and forces that ship to move, we'll be ready." Earl felt a surge of hope. "You're saying if we can push them, you can hit them?" "That's exactly what I'm saying. You get them off balance, we'll finish the job." Danny called down from the roof. "Ship's glow is intensifying." "Whatever it's doing, it's almost ready." Earl grabbed his radio. "All positions prepare to fire on my signal. Wait for Craig's countdown. From his position on the ridge, Craig checked his watch one more time. He'd synchronized it to the atomic clock signal. Everyone was working off the same time. Ready when you are, Earl. At the quarry, Jake tightened the last connection. Marcus stood by the main firing switch. Both men looked at each other and nodded. Whatever happened, they'd done their best. Katie made final adjustments to her timing system. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky orange and red. It would have been beautiful if not for the glowing alien ship overhead. Earl took a deep breath. His whole life had been in this town. He'd raised his kids here, buried his parents here, made his living here. Pineville was home. And he'd be damned if some aliens were going to take it without a fight. Craig, begin the countdown. Craig's calm voice came over every radio. 60 seconds. All positions stand by. Across Pineville, people held their breath. At the high school, families huddled together. Betty held hands with Lisa. Roy stood by Earl's side, watching the sky. 45 seconds. Jake closed his eyes and thought about his family. His parents who'd moved away last year. He wished they could know what he was doing. What all of them were doing. 30 seconds. Katie's hands were steady on her controls. Years of training as a firefighter had taught her to stay calm under pressure. But this was different. This was everything. 20 seconds. Marcus thought about his kids. They were at the high school with everyone else. He wanted them to grow up, to have families of their own, to remember that their dad had fought for them. 10 seconds. Earl looked up at the glowing ship. Somewhere up there, aliens thought Earth was weak, thought humanity would just roll over and die. They were about to learn different. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Mark. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the night exploded into light. Part 3 of the quarry erupted first. 50 mortar tubes fired at the same instant with a sound like thunder. Shells screamed into the sky, leaving trails of fire and smoke behind them. Each one climbed higher and higher, reaching for the heavens. At the ridge, Craig's rocket battery ignited in a rolling wave. Dozens of rockets launched in perfect sequence, their engines roaring as they spiraled upward. The ground shook from the force. The light was almost blinding. Katie's position at the water tower came alive with explosions. Her timed cascade began, shell after shell detonating at precise intervals. Each blast created a stepping stone of fire climbing toward the alien ship. Aboard the Domination, chaos erupted on the bridge. Multiple launches detected, the sensor officer screamed. Hundreds of projectiles incoming. Commander Vexthor stared at his displays in disbelief. Impossible. Their weapons cannot reach us at this altitude. The first shells reached their apex and exploded. They weren't aimed at the ship. They were aimed at the space around it. Massive bursts of fire and smoke filled the sky. Each explosion created waves of pressure and heat. Gravitational stabilizers fluctuating, the engineering officer called out. The atmospheric disturbances are interfering with our systems. Compensate, Vexthor ordered. Trying, sir, but there are too many. They're synchronized. More shells detonated. The sky became a battlefield of light and sound. Every explosion created turbulence. Every burst of flame disrupted the carefully balanced systems keeping the Domination in position. Down in Pineville, the second wave launched. Earl had planned the timing perfectly. Just as the first wave's effects peaked, more launchers fired. Bobby Hayes had mounted firework mortars on the back of his pickup truck. Someone else had created a launching platform from irrigation pipes. The town had gotten creative. It's working, Danny shouted from the roof. The ship is moving. Look, he was right. Through his binoculars, Danny could see the Domination listing slightly. The perfect hover was disrupted. The ship was trying to compensate, but every time it stabilized, another wave of explosions hammered the atmosphere around it. Jake watched from the quarry as his shells climbed into the sky. We're actually doing it. We're fighting back. Marcus slapped him on the shoulder. Don't celebrate yet. Keep firing. They loaded more shells into the tubes. The battery kept firing. The noise was incredible. The smell of gunpowder filled the air, but nobody stopped. They couldn't stop. Commander Vexthor gripped his command chair as the deck tilted. Status, stabilizers failing. We cannot maintain position. How is this possible? They're using primitive explosives. His science officer pulled up a display. Sir, they're not trying to hit us. They're disrupting the atmospheric stability we need for our gravitational field. Every explosion creates pressure waves and heat disturbances. Our systems cannot compensate for this many simultaneous disruptions. Can we deploy the weapon? Negative. We've lost targeting lock. The ship is moving too much. Vexithor made a decision. Emergency ascent. Get us above this chaos. Sir, if we ascend, we'll be exposed to any orbital defenses the humans have. We're being attacked by fireworks, Vexithor roared. Move this ship now. The Domination's engines roared to life. The massive vessel began climbing, trying to escape the atmospheric chaos below. But in their panic to escape the fireworks, they made a critical mistake. At the Military Command Center in Georgia, General Price watched his screens. The alien ship's trajectory had changed. It was ascending, moving into a higher orbit, right into the firing solution his orbital platforms had been calculating for hours. All stations. This is General Price. You are authorized to engage the hostile vessel. In orbit, weapons that had been silent suddenly came online. Railguns locked onto the Domination. Missile batteries turned toward their target. Laser platforms charged their systems. Earl's radio crackled. Earl, this is General Price. Your crazy plan worked. The ship is ascending right into our trap. Tell your people to cease fire. All positions, cease fire, Earl called out. I repeat, cease fire. The launches stopped. The explosions ended. In the sudden quiet, the people of Pineville could hear the alien ship's engines straining as it climbed. Did we do it? Katie asked over the radio. Craig was staring at his calculations, laughing. We did. We actually did it. Danny watched through his binoculars as new lights appeared in orbit. Not the orange glow of fireworks. The cold blue-white flash of military weapons. Something's happening up there. General Price's voice came over the radio again. Earl, the orbital defense grid is engaging. Your town drove them off. We'll take it from here. In orbit, the Domination found itself facing weapons it hadn't expected. Railgun slugs moving at incredible speed forced them to dodge. Missiles bracketed their escape routes. Laser fire tested their shields. Multiple targeting locks, the sensor officer screamed. They have orbital weapons. The intelligence reports were wrong. Get us out of here, Vexithor shouted. Contact the fleet. Tell them to abort the invasion. Sir, we need time to charge the jump drive. Then buy me that time. The Domination's shields flared as a railgun slug hit them. Alarms blared across the ship. More missiles were incoming. More lasers were firing. The humans apparently had been hiding their true capabilities. Below in Pineville, people emerged from their positions. They gathered in the town center, watching the light show in orbit. They couldn't see the details, but they could see enough to know their impossible plan had worked. Jake was covered in soot and smoke. His ears were ringing from the noise, but he was grinning. We did it. We actually did it, Marcus hugged him. I'll be damned. We fought off an alien invasion with fireworks. Katie arrived from the water tower and Sophie ran to hug her. You saved us, Miss Katie. We all saved each other, honey. That's what a community does. Craig came down from the ridge, his truck loaded with unused rockets. He found Earl at the gas station, surrounded by cheering townspeople. Earl Dawson, Craig said, shaking his hand. That was either the craziest or the smartest thing we've ever done. Little bit of both, I think. Betty pushed through the crowd with coffee for everyone. I can't believe we're still alive. Neither can I, Earl admitted. But we are. Danny climbed down from the roof and joined the group. The ship's still up there, but it's damaged. Those orbital weapons are hitting it hard. In orbit, Commander Vexithor watched his screens as the jump drive finally charged. His ship was battered. His mission had failed. And worst of all, it had been defeated by a small town using festival explosives. Jump drive ready, sir. Get us out of this system. Now. With a flash of energy, the Domination fled. The other alien ships in the fleet saw what happened and immediately turned around. The invasion was over before it really began. General Price called Earl one more time. Earl, the alien ship has retreated. All the ships are retreating. The invasion fleet is leaving Earth. The town erupted in cheers. People hugged each other. Some cried. Others laughed. They'd done the impossible. Earl looked around at his neighbors, at the people he'd lived with his whole life. They were covered in soot and smoke. They were exhausted, but they were alive. We did good, he said quietly. We did better than good, Betty replied. We won. Roy Henderson arrived in his truck, still loaded with unused fireworks. Well, I guess we didn't need all of them after all. Keep them, Earl said. Just in case they come back. You think they will? Earl looked up at the stars. The alien ship was gone. The danger had passed. But the universe was bigger than he'd ever imagined. I don't know, but if they do, we'll be ready. At the high school, families emerged from the shelter. Parents found their children. Husbands found their wives. Everyone wanted to know what happened. The story spread quickly. Pineville had fought back, and Pineville had won. As the night wore on, people gathered at Betty's diner. She opened it up and started cooking. Nobody wanted to go home yet. They wanted to be together, to celebrate, to remember. Jake sat at the counter drinking coffee. You know what the craziest part is? We're just regular people, farmers and mechanics and teachers. We're not soldiers, but we are survivors, Marcus said. And we're stubborn. Don't ever underestimate stubborn. Katie raised her coffee cup. To Pineville, the town that fought aliens with fireworks and won. Everyone raised their cups. To Pineville. Outside, the stars shone bright and clear. Somewhere up there, an alien commander was probably filing a report about his defeat. Earl hoped that report got read by every alien in the galaxy, because Earth wasn't defenseless. Its people weren't weak, and if you threatened them, they'd fight back with everything they had, even if all they had was fireworks. Commander Vexthor sat in his damaged ship staring at his reports. His career was over. He'd lost a battle to primitives using festival decorations. The shame was overwhelming. Sir, message from the fleet commander. They want your report, Vexthor began typing. He detailed the atmospheric attacks, the unexpected orbital defenses, the complete failure of intelligence. But mostly he wrote about the humans themselves, how they didn't panic, how they organized, how they fought with whatever they had. Recommendation, sir? Vexthor thought about it carefully. Then he typed, Earth should be classified as a hostile world. Avoid at all costs. The humans are dangerously unpredictable and will fight with unexpected methods. They do not surrender easily. Part 4. The morning sun rose over Pineville to reveal a town that looked like it had thrown the world's biggest party. Spent firework shells littered the launch sites. Scorch marks decorated the ground at the quarry. The smell of gunpowder still hung in the air. Earl sat on the sidewalk outside his gas station, holding a cup of coffee Betty had brought him. He hadn't slept all night. None of them had. They'd stayed up, talking and laughing and trying to believe what they'd done. How you feeling? Betty asked, sitting beside him. Like I fought a war with fireworks and somehow won. She laughed softly. Because you did. Danny walked over from his house, still wearing the same clothes from yesterday. He had his binoculars around his neck. Checked the sky. Nothing up there except birds and clouds. Good, Earl said. That's real good. Cars started arriving around mid-morning. Military vehicles first. Then news vans, then government sedans with official plates. Within hours, Pineville was flooded with visitors who all wanted to know the same thing. How did a small town defeat an alien warship? General Price arrived in person, stepping out of an army truck in full uniform. He walked straight to Earl and shook his hand. Mr. Dawson, I've been in the military for 35 years. I've seen a lot of things. But what you did last night tops everything. We just protected our home, General. You did more than that. You changed history. The General gestured to the people gathering around. Mind if we talk? I need to understand exactly how you pulled this off. Earl led him inside the store, where Craig had spread out all the calculations and plans they'd used. Maps covered the counter. Radio equipment still sat on every surface. Empty coffee cups were everywhere. This is impressive, the General said, studying the maps. You organized 3 synchronized launch sites with civilian equipment and consumer fireworks. Craig spoke up from where he was organizing papers. It wasn't perfect, sir. We had to improvise a lot, but we understood the principle. Disrupt their positioning system and force them to move. And it worked perfectly. The General pulled out his phone and made a call. Yes, I'm at the location. You need to see this setup. Bring the analysis team. More people arrived. Military analysts, scientists, engineers. They examined every launch site, took measurements, interviewed everyone involved. Jake found himself explaining his work at the quarry to a colonel who took notes on everything. You used car batteries and wire from a hardware store? Yes, sir. We didn't have time for fancy equipment, just had to make do with what we had. Remarkable. Katie gave a tour of her water tower position to a team of NASA engineers. They were fascinated by her timing system. You programmed Christmas light controllers to trigger fireworks? It was Sophie's idea, actually, Katie said, gesturing to the teenager. She works with those controllers for school plays. Figured they could work for this, too. The NASA team was impressed. This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking we need. By afternoon, news crews had set up all over town. Reporters interviewed anyone who'd participate. Earl found himself on camera explaining the plan for what felt like the 100th time. We didn't think we'd win, he told the reporter honestly. We just knew we had to try. This is our home. You don't let someone take your home without a fight. The story spread fast. By evening, Pineville was on every news channel in the world. The town that fought aliens with fireworks. The community that refused to give up. The place where ordinary people did something extraordinary. Betty's diner was packed with journalists and soldiers and townspeople all mixed together. She was running low on food but kept cooking anyway. Lisa helped serve while Bobby ran to the next town over for more supplies. This is crazy, Betty said, flipping burgers. Yesterday we were worried about dying. Today we're famous. Rather be famous than dead, Lisa replied, carrying plates to a table. Marcus sat with his family, finally able to relax. His kids kept asking him to tell the story again. And then we fired all 50 tubes at once. The sound was like nothing you've ever heard. Were you scared, Dad? Terrified. But sometimes you have to do scary things for the right reasons. At the Pentagon, meetings were happening at the highest levels. General Price had sent his full report. The Secretary of Defense was reading it carefully. So a town of 1,200 people held off an alien warship using commercial fireworks? Yes, ma'am, an aide confirmed. The after-action analysis shows their plan was surprisingly sophisticated. They identified the enemy's weakness and exploited it using available resources. And this happened because they didn't wait for orders. They just acted. Correct. The Secretary thought about this. We've been building our defense strategy around centralized command and high-tech weapons. But Pineville won with decentralized action and low-tech solutions. It's a significant finding, ma'am. Get me the Joint Chiefs. We need to talk about this. Back in Pineville, Roy was giving interviews at his property, showing off his fireworks collection. Reporters were amazed by the sheer quantity. You've been collecting these for 40 years? Yep. Every state fair, every celebration. I'd buy extras and store them. Never knew what I'd use them for. But I figured they'd come in handy someday. And they saved the world. Roy grinned. Well, they saved our town. That's good enough for me. As the sun set, Earl climbed onto his gas station roof where Danny was sitting. The old veteran had his binoculars out, still watching the sky. See anything? Earl asked. Nothing but stars. The good kind. The kind that are far away. They sat in silence for a while, watching darkness fall over Pineville. The town below was lit up with activity. Generators powered lights for the news crews. Vehicles moved through the streets. But it felt alive, not threatened. You know what I keep thinking about? Danny said. All those other towns. The ones that had ships over them. They evacuated or hid, but we fought back. We got lucky, Earl said. Maybe, but luck favors the bold. We were bold, Earl. Our whole town was bold. A car pulled up below. A woman in an expensive suit got out and called up to them. Mr. Dawson? I need to speak with you. Earl climbed down, curious. The woman introduced herself as someone important from the government, though Earl didn't catch all the titles. Mr. Dawson, I wanted to brief you on what happened last night. The bigger picture. I'm listening. 37 alien vessels appeared over population centers across the southern states. We believe they were preparing to deploy weapons that would have killed millions. Maybe more, Earl felt cold. And they all retreated. Every single one. The ship over Pineville was the first to leave, driven off by your defense. The others saw what happened and fled. Your actions didn't just save your town. You saved millions of lives. Earl had to sit down. The weight of it hit him suddenly. They'd thought they were just fighting for Pineville. But it had been so much bigger. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand the impact. What you did here is changing everything. How we think about defense. How we organize communities. How we prepare for future threats. She paused. You've shown us that strength doesn't just come from the military. It comes from people who care about their homes. Later that night, Earl gathered the core group at the gas station. Craig, Marcus, Katie, Jake, Danny, Betty, Lisa, Roy, and Bobby. The people who'd made it happen. I talked to someone from the government today, Earl said. Turns out we didn't just save ourselves. We saved a lot of people. How many? Craig asked. Millions, maybe. All those other towns that had ships over them. When ours left, they all left. The group was quiet, processing this information, so what do we do now? Jake asked. We keep living, Betty said firmly. We did something amazing. We saved lives. But we're still just us. Still just Pineville. She's right, Marcus agreed. Yeah, we're going to be famous for a while. Yeah, things are going to be different. But at the end of the day, we're still neighbors. Still friends. Still community. Katie raised her coffee cup. To community. They all raised their cups and echoed her. To community. The military analysts worked through the night, documenting everything about Pineville's defense. The timing, the coordination, the improvisation. By morning, they had a complete tactical manual based on what the town had done. General Price reviewed the document and nodded with satisfaction. This needs to go to every defense organization in the country. Hell, in the world. If those aliens come back, every town should know how to fight like Pineville did. Sir, should we also document what didn't work? Everything worked. That's the remarkable part. These people didn't have a backup plan because they couldn't afford to fail. So they didn't. As the week went on, Pineville slowly returned to normal. The news crews left. The military analysts finished their work. The government officials went back to their offices. Life continued, but some things had changed forever. The town had proven something important, not just to the world but to themselves. They'd learned they were capable of more than they'd thought. That ordinary people could do extraordinary things when they worked together. Earl stood on his porch watching another sunset. Betty joined him with 2 glasses of sweet tea. Think they'll come back? She asked. The aliens? I don't know. But if they do, we'll be ready. With more fireworks? Earl smiled. With whatever it takes. Part 5. 3 months passed since the night Pineville became famous. The town had settled into a strange new routine. Tour buses still came through several times a week, bringing people who wanted to see where the famous defense had happened. Earl's Gas and Grocery now had a small gift shop corner. Betty's Diner served something called the Defender's Special that was just her regular meatloaf with a fancy name. Jake's mechanic shop was booked solid for months. People drove from 3 states away just to get their cars fixed by one of the Pineville Defenders. He'd hired 2 new workers to help with the demand. This is getting ridiculous, Jake said one morning looking at his appointment book. I've got people wanting oil changes who live 5 hours away. You're famous, his assistant replied. Might as well enjoy it. Katie was still the fire chief, though now she had consulting work on the side. Companies wanted her to teach them about improvised timing systems. She'd turned down job offers from 3 aerospace companies and 1 tech firm. Why not take the money? Sophie asked her one day. Because this is home, Katie said simply. Money can't replace that. Craig's farm was running better than ever. He'd also become a guest lecturer at the military academy, teaching classes on asymmetric warfare and creative problem solving. Once a month, he'd drive to the base, give his lecture, and drive home. How do you teach what we did? Marcus asked him. It was mostly making it up as we went. That's exactly what I teach. How to think on your feet, how to use what you have, how to not give up just because the situation looks impossible. Danny had become something of a celebrity among military veterans. His story of watching the sky and being the first to spot the alien ship had spread through veteran communities. He gave interviews and talked about staying alert, staying ready. Roy Henderson was living his best life. His fireworks collection was now officially recognized as a strategic defense resource. The government even helped him expand his storage and buy new inventory. I never thought I'd be working with the military at my age, Roy told visitors. But here we are. They actually pay me to keep buying fireworks now. Betty and Earl had gotten married quietly at the courthouse. They'd been dancing around their feelings for years, and nearly dying had given them perspective. Life was too short not to be happy. Took an alien invasion to make you propose, Betty teased him. I'm a slow learner, Earl admitted, but I get there eventually. The town had changed in other ways too. New people had moved in, attracted by Pineville's story. Young families wanted their kids to grow up in a place that valued community and courage. The population had grown to nearly 1,500. Lisa's school had more students than ever. She'd started a program teaching kids about science and problem solving, using the Pineville defense as an example. What you need to understand, she told her class, is that the adults didn't win because they were smarter or stronger than anyone else. They won because they worked together and didn't give up. But they had to be brave, one student said. They were terrified. But they did it anyway. That's what real courage is. At the Pentagon, the impact of Pineville's defense was still being felt. The military had completely restructured its approach to planetary defense. Every community in America now had access to resources and training for local defense. It was called the Pineville Protocol. General Price had been promoted and now oversaw the program. He visited Pineville regularly to check on things and catch up with the people he'd helped that night. "You started something bigger than you realize," he told Earl during one visit. "Towns all over the country are organizing their own defense plans. Some are even stockpiling fireworks." "That seems crazy," Earl said. "It is crazy, but it's also smart. You proved that local defense works, that communities can protect themselves if they're prepared. What if the aliens come back? Then we'll be ready. But honestly, I don't think they will. We intercepted some of their communications. They're calling Earth a dangerous world. They're warning other species to stay away." Earl smiled at that. Good. The international community had also taken notice. Representatives from dozens of countries had visited Pineville to learn from what happened. The United Nations had created a global defense network based on the Pineville model. One day, a visitor arrived who surprised everyone. A woman in an elegant suit stepped out of a car with diplomatic plates. She introduced herself as an ambassador from something called the Galactic Federation. "I'm sorry, the what?" Earl asked. "The Galactic Federation. It's an alliance of peaceful species who share trade and knowledge. We've been watching Earth for some time, but recent events have accelerated our timeline for making contact." Earl called an emergency meeting at the gas station. The core group gathered to hear what the ambassador had to say. "Your defense against the Zathran Empire impressed many species," the ambassador explained. "You demonstrated qualities the Federation values: courage, innovation, and willingness to protect others." "We were just protecting ourselves," Marcus said. "Were you? Your actions caused the Zathran to retreat from Earth entirely. But did you know that your success inspired 3 other worlds to resist when the Zathran attacked them? Your tactics were shared across subspace communication networks. Other species used fireworks and similar methods to defend themselves. You didn't just save Earth, you saved multiple civilizations." The room went silent. They'd known they saved their town. They'd learned they saved millions on Earth. But other worlds? Other species? "That's impossible," Katie said quietly. "It's documented fact. The Zathran were expanding aggressively. Your resistance broke their momentum. Other species found hope in your example." Craig leaned forward. "So what does this mean?" "The Federation would like to extend an invitation to Earth to join as a member world. You would receive technology, trade opportunities, and protection. In return, Earth would contribute to the Federation's collective defense and knowledge." "That's way above our level," Earl said. "You need to talk to governments." "We have. But Federation tradition requires that we also speak to those who first defended the planet. You represent the best of humanity, ordinary people doing extraordinary things." After the ambassador left, the group sat in stunned silence. "We really changed everything, didn't we?" Jake said finally. "Looks like it," Betty replied. "So what do we tell them?" Earl thought about it carefully. "We tell them Earth should join. But Earth stays Earth. We don't change who we are just to fit in with some galactic club." "You think they'll accept that?" Craig asked. "If they don't, then they don't really understand what makes humanity special." The message was relayed through official channels. Earth negotiated its entry into the Galactic Federation over several months. The terms were favorable. Earth would join as an equal partner, not a junior member. Human culture would be respected. And most importantly, humanity's approach to defense, the grassroots community model pioneered by Pineville, would be shared with other Federation worlds. Life in Pineville continued to evolve. The town became a training center for community defense strategies. People from around the world came to learn how a small town had changed history. Danny still sat on his porch every morning watching the sky. But now sometimes he saw ships that weren't from Earth passing by. Trade vessels, exploration ships. The universe had gotten a lot more crowded. "You ever think about what's out there?" Earl asked him one morning. "Every day," Danny replied. "But I'm too old to go exploring. I'm happy right here." "Me too." Katie and Sophie had started a program teaching young people about improvised engineering. Using the fireworks defense as a case study, they taught problem-solving and creative thinking. "The lesson isn't about fireworks," Katie told her students. "The lesson is about seeing problems differently. about using what you have instead of wishing for what you don't have. Jake had expanded his shop and now also taught mechanics to students from other countries. His approach was hands-on and practical. Fix things with what's available. Make it work. Marcus's quarry had become a historical site. The exact positions of the mortar tubes were marked. School groups visited to learn about the battle. He gave tours on weekends, telling the story over and over, making sure nobody forgot what happened. Why is it important to remember? A student asked during one tour. Because it reminds us that we're not helpless, that regular people can make a difference. That's a lesson worth remembering. Roy's fireworks collection had tripled in size. The government had even built him a proper facility with climate control and security. He gave demonstrations for visiting military personnel, showing them proper techniques for using fireworks as defensive tools. Never thought I'd be teaching soldiers how to fight with fireworks, Roy said, laughing. But here we are. Craig continued farming but also wrote a book about the Pineville defense. It became required reading at military academies on 3 planets. He found this hilarious. "I'm just a farmer who got lucky," he'd say when people called him an expert. "You're the farmer who changed military doctrine across multiple worlds," they'd reply. Betty and Earl ran the gas station together now, having turned it into both a business and a community center. The back room where they'd planned the defense was preserved exactly as it had been that night. Maps still on the walls, radio equipment still on the table. People need to see this, Betty. Part 6. 10 years had passed since the night that changed everything. Pineville had grown into a small city of nearly 8,000 people, but somehow it still felt like a town. Everyone still knew their neighbors. People still gathered at Betty's diner. The community spirit that had saved them remained strong. Earl and Betty sat on their porch, now in their 70s, watching the morning traffic. Ships from other worlds were common sights in the sky now. Earth had become a hub for galactic trade and cultural exchange. But Pineville remained special, the place where it all started. "Mail's here," Betty said, sorting through letters. "Another invitation to speak at a conference. This one's on a planet I can't even pronounce." "Tell them no," Earl said, sipping his coffee. "I'm too old to travel to other star systems. You say that every time. Then you go anyway." Earl smiled because she was right. He'd visited 7 different worlds over the past decade, always telling the same story. How a small town fought back. How ordinary people made a difference. The story never got old because people needed to hear it. Danny had passed away 2 years ago, peacefully in his sleep at age 82. The town had given him a military funeral with honors. His porch where he first spotted the alien ship was now a historical marker. Young Danny, his great-nephew, had moved to Pineville and continued the tradition of watching the sky each morning. Uncle Danny would be amazed by all this, young Danny often said, referring to the changed world around them. Katie was now mayor of Pineville, elected by overwhelming popular vote. She'd turned down bigger political opportunities to stay local. Her focus was on maintaining the town's character while managing its growth. "We're not just a tourist destination," she told her council during meetings. "We're a real community with real needs. Yes, we're famous, but we're also home to families who need good schools, safe streets, and opportunities." Sophie, now a young woman, worked as Katie's assistant. She'd studied engineering at a university but came back to Pineville after graduating. "Why come back?" people asked her. "Because this is where things happen," she'd reply. "This is where ordinary people do extraordinary things. I want to be part of that." Jake ran the largest mechanic shop in the region, now employing 27 people. But he still personally worked on cars, getting his hands dirty every day. Fame hadn't changed him. "You could just manage the business," his wife told him. "I'm a mechanic," Jake said simply. "That's who I am." His shop had become a training center for young mechanics from Earth and other worlds. Humans had a reputation across the galaxy for being able to fix anything with minimal tools. Jake's shop taught that practical, hands-on approach. Craig had retired from farming and spent his time teaching. Not just at military academies, but at community centers, schools, anywhere people wanted to learn about creative problem-solving. The Pineville defense wasn't about weapons, he'd tell students. It was about mindset. We looked at an impossible situation and asked, what can we do with what we have? That question changes everything. Marcus still gave tours of the quarry battle site, though now his children and grandchildren helped. The quarry itself had been partially preserved as a memorial. The exact positions of the mortar tubes were marked with permanent installations. This is where we stood, Marcus would tell tour groups. This is where regular people became defenders. Remember that. You don't need to be special to do something important. Roy Henderson had passed away at 81, and the town gave him a send-off fitting for a hero. His fireworks collection was maintained by his family and the government as both a memorial and a strategic resource. The annual Roy Henderson Memorial Fireworks display was the biggest in the region. Betty's Diner had expanded into a restaurant, but she'd kept the original building intact. The booth where the core group used to meet had a brass plaque. People came from across the galaxy to eat there and soak in the history. "I never thought I'd be serving food to aliens," Betty said one day, watching a crystalline being from Proxima eat her famous apple pie. "How is it?" she asked the visitor. The translator device responded, "This is why humanity is respected across the galaxy. You create simple things with profound impact." Lisa had become the superintendent of Pineville schools, overseeing an education system that attracted students from multiple worlds. The curriculum included practical problem solving, community values, and what they called the Pineville principles: courage, creativity, and cooperation. "We're teaching more than facts," Lisa explained to visiting educators. "We're teaching an approach to life, how to face challenges, how to work together, how to never give up." The Galactic Federation had headquarters on Earth now, built in New York City, but they maintained an office in Pineville as well, honoring the town's role in humanity's introduction to galactic society. Ambassador Chen, the human representative to the Federation, visited Pineville regularly. She'd grown up hearing the story and had been inspired to pursue diplomacy. "This town changed the course of human history," she told Earl during one visit. "You know that, right?" "We just did what we had to do," Earl replied. "That's exactly why it matters. You didn't wait for permission or orders. You saw a problem and solved it. That attitude is why humanity has thrived in the Federation." Earth's economy had boomed after joining the Federation. Access to new technologies and trade routes had lifted billions out of poverty. Medicine had advanced dramatically with alien knowledge. Energy was clean and abundant. Humanity had a bright future, but there were challenges too. Some people resented the alien presence. Some wanted Earth to remain isolated. There were protests and political movements opposed to Federation membership. "They don't understand," young Danny said during a town meeting. "The aliens aren't here to take over. They're here to be neighbors." "Some people are afraid of change," Katie replied. "We just have to keep showing them that working together is better than standing alone." Pineville had become a symbol of human-alien cooperation. The town actively welcomed visitors from other worlds. Several alien families had even moved to Pineville permanently, attracted by its history and values. One family, the Kalari from a water world, opened a restaurant serving their native cuisine. The food was strange to human tastes at first, but people learned to love it. "This is what the Federation is about," Earl said, eating dinner at the Kalari restaurant. Different people sharing their cultures, learning from each other. The military had evolved too. The Pineville Protocol was standard doctrine now, not just on Earth but on dozens of Federation worlds. Local defense networks, community preparedness, creative use of available resources. The principles that saved Pineville had been adopted across multiple civilizations. General Price, now retired, visited Pineville often. He'd written extensively about the battle and its impact on military thinking. "You fundamentally changed how we think about warfare," he told Craig during one visit. "The idea that low-tech solutions can defeat high-tech threats revolutionized our entire approach." "We just used what we had," Craig said. "Exactly. And that's the lesson. Sophistication isn't always the answer. Sometimes simple and creative beats advanced and predictable." The Zathran Empire, the aliens who had attacked Earth, had collapsed several years after their failed invasion. Their aggressive expansion had made too many enemies. When they fell, the Federation helped rebuild their worlds under new leadership. Ironically, some Zathran now lived on Earth, including a small community in Alabama. They'd chosen the region specifically because of its history, wanting to understand the people who'd defeated them. One Zathran named Kelthar visited Earl's porch regularly. They'd become unlikely friends. "I was on the fleet that retreated," Kelthar explained through his translator. "I saw the domination flee from fireworks. It changed how I thought about strength." "How so?" Earl asked. "I realized strength isn't just about weapons or ships. It's about will. About refusing to lose. Your people had that will. My people did not. Sounds like your people have it now, Earl said. You rebuilt your civilization. That takes strength, too. As the 10th anniversary of the defense approached, Pineville prepared for the biggest celebration yet. The Federation had declared it an official holiday, Unity Day. All across the galaxy, people would celebrate the moment that proved different species could work together. The preparations were massive. Visitors were coming from hundreds of worlds. Ships filled the sky. Hotels were booked for 100 miles in every direction. Pineville was about to host the largest gathering in its history. Katie worked around the clock coordinating everything. Sophie and her team managed logistics. Jake made sure all the vehicles were maintained. Betty prepared food for thousands. The entire community came together, just like they had 10 years ago. This is bigger than I expected, Katie admitted to Earl. It's bigger than any of us expected, but we'll handle it. How can you be so calm? Earl smiled. Because I've seen what this community can do when we work together. Planning a party is nothing compared to fighting off an invasion. The celebration lasted 3 days. Speakers from dozens of worlds talked about unity and cooperation. Musicians performed fusion pieces combining human and alien instruments. Artists displayed works inspired by the Pineville defense. On the final night, Earl was asked to give the closing speech. He stood on